did the kind of what you call the link analysis tables, the manual tables, where did the 7 steps, right? So broadly these steps for link analysis, and you did this for a case, and then we try to figure out why we are doing link analysis, what is the requirement for link analysis, and now remember that day when we were doing this we try to first differentiate data and intelligence, right? So we were mapping specific, we have written it out also.
So I have next week I have the UNMDC training.
On this thing? Okay. Who's the training provider? And then from the association matrix, we then created the link analysis graph, right? So when you are doing that, we then figured out why. So these are your two outputs. Now remember why we do something like this. Now remember, so in this particular task, remember, based on the context, based on your reading on the context, so this is the answer key. So from the text, this is of course a more graphical the link analysis graph, but so this is called the association table, right? So from the association table, the first thing that you do that is basically the link counts, right? And that day you had 2 entities with similar counts, remember? So the owner, I think both groups had the same kind of thing. For this also, this group also 1, 2, 3, and then for Carlos also 1, 2, 3. Right, and I think similar case here also 1, 2, 2.5. So this is unconfirmed link, and for this also 3, right? And the key point that we made was, so what was the question that I asked you on that day? On this graph, what's my first question? So this is a criminal analysis, criminal setup. We want to prioritize attacking or prioritize bringing one node down. What is the node that you would target? And there were two sets of answers. One was this, right, the owner, and one was this, right? So then we discussed, okay, from the graph, if we hit one node, what would have the higher effect, right? And then you could say that if we do attack this, of course there would be effect. That is, we are not saying that there's no effect whatsoever in attacking this node, but you could clearly see that there's another node where it will have a larger impact on the overall network, and that is this node, right? Because this is the chief operating person, and that person is connected to the owner. Person is connected to the finance, connected to logistics, and so if this node is taken out, then of course all of the connections break down, right? Of course, if you break this, the ownership breaks down. But my question was, what node would have the most effect in bringing the whole thing down? And that would be most definitely this node. So did you see that by just looking, if you just read the text, if you just read the case description, your intuition would be that, okay, maybe the leadership is that's normal, right? If you want to break down the organization, you take out the leadership. That is basically our intuition. But from the link analysis, we arrived at a different conclusion. Now remember, this is an extremely small case, right? So for actual link analysis, this graph is messy. So we'll look at some of these things, and then you would realize that doing this on paper would not be practical. Right, so this okay, maybe now here of course you didn't have all the nodes, so this is a comprehensive list of entities. Now, some key things that you missed was you went with the traditional definition of what entity is, people and companies. So you basically both had that, but that is not again for link analysis. There's a whole lot more also, because here what we're trying to do is to identify relationships between certain entities, so that we can build a relationship between those entities that would arrive at answering our intelligence questions. And in certain cases, that answer would come from not simply companies and people. Can you see something, some more entities that I included? Streets, the vehicle. So clubs, I think you had. So the banks. Now the connection, now the purpose of link analysis is to actually bring this out explicitly, so that you don't miss it, right? So I mean, you could say that even in the street you don't have a lot of connections, but still there can be something important that relates to the case and that you needed to bring into the analysis, right? So this is the complete link association matrix, and then this is the number of what you call connections and link count, which is again what we use. But in all projects, the link count is not the most high. In certain cases, link count is the way to go. You want to understand the main node or the node that we want to take out to bring down the network. But in certain cases, you are not looking at the main node, you are looking at some sub nodes, because your intelligence questions are directing at that direction. So here, now, I think now here, of course, in most of your cases, I think you had about, so here I think 1, 2, 3, and this is 2. If we at 0.51 confirm, that's 4, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 at 4.5. Right? So in my case, I have a bit more. 7. Why? The number of entities the number is a bit large than what you had, right? So in my case, of course, if I went with the total number of links, then again my answer is there. So this is the key kind of node, right? But in your case, both of you had similar numbers for those two entities, but then we had to look at the arrangement of the relationships, and then we looked at, okay, if we break this down, it will have a larger hit on the network. Because if you take, like, for example, this kind of thing, so now if you are required to choose the most important node with these 5 entities, what would you do?
Good.
So these 6, the 1, 2, 3, 4, these nodes. Okay, I want, what is your pick for the highest important node? Question. And मेवा question तब exam में कहेंगे. I'll give you a case, hypothetical. I'll give you a case. You wrote down the link analysis thing. That is not in the question. That is just to answer the question, and then you'll create something like this. And now I'm asking, okay, for the entities that have the same number of total links, what would you consider the highest priority? If you're good, okay. So confirm Deva Vadima. Okay, good. We have 3. Then, okay, good starting point. Exactly. Purely based on this, you can't answer. So then you look at the arrangement of the nodes. So then if you can, like, if there is a node like this that is central and the relationships are, the 5 relationships are central. If you break it down, the half of the network goes down. That is then the answer. Okay, so you have to logically arrive at a lot of these things. And yeah, so what we do now is basically, so for the task, now in this course, there's 3 key tools that we are targeting. One is Shodan. We had a lab. Okay. In any OSINT course, you will have these tools. Shodan, and the next one is Maltego. Maltego is purely like targeted OSINT, right? And that is why now in Maltego you can do a lot more than link analysis, but link analysis is like the main use case, right? So what we do is now the same task we'll try to do it in Maltego. Also, we'll try to do another particular function that Maltego is actually. Now this kind of thing you can of course do without Maltego also, like a manual tool also you can draw this, but there's a whole different use case with Maltego, and this is what we're going to look at in the first. Okay, so now this is the lab sheet. Did you install? With which version of Java? LTS, which version? Latest one. Okay, so that means he'll get stuck a little bit when you load up a new data load. This will break down. 21, right? Java. Okay. So not 21. 25 is LTS. Correct, right? Can you check out which version? You have 21, that's fine. So then the make a case even the quiz over right. With the make a Maltego make a here, they will give you know see a support current here, but 25 will work. Load you know okay, look load data load like that तो crash है command में अभी basically current long term LTS version is 25, but it goes until 20, so it's supporting until 21. LTS 21. Yeah. You have 21? There's no problem. But current LTS, most up to date is 25. They have not ported the tool yet to 25. But okay, everybody installed? Yeah, okay. So now what we do is basically I'll first give you an overview of the tool. Now,
රික්වෙස්ට් එකක් තියෙනවා හවස ලෙක්චර් එකේ පා කියලා මේ තින්නේ මොකද නැවකට යන්න රික්වෙස්ට් එකක් දාලා තියෙනවා ඒක
කීයටද වෙලාව
3 එකේ හවස 3 කට ලෙක්චර් එක
ඔබගේ ලෙක්චරර්ස් ඉන්නෝනේ දෝනේ හරි ඕකේ දැන් මට ඔය ලව කරන්න තෝරන ඉස්සරහට පහමාර එක තමයි නැති වෙන්නේ ඒක හමාර තියෙනවා
ඔව් ඒක තියෙනවා සර් ඒකයි මේ වෙඩින් එකේ වෙඩින්
හරි ඒක මම
ඒ සතියෙම නැති
සතියෙම නෙමෙයි 31 නේ බුදුහාම සතියෙම නැති කරන්න කියලා 31 නේ රික්වෙස්ට් එක දුන්නේ
ඔව් ජැප් නැති ජැප් නැති
මම දන්නේ නැහැ මට මෙයා රික්වෙස්ට් එක දුන්නේ 31 එපා කියලා මම මේක එහෙම රික්වෙස්ට් කරා ඔයාගේ ඊමේල් එක මේකේ පස්සේ අප්ලෝඩ් කරගත්තා මම කිව්වා ඔෆිෂියල් ඊමේල් එකක් දාන්න කියලා ඒක මම බෝඩ් එකට යනකොට ඊමේල් එක
ඔෆිෂියල් මෙයා දැන් අදින්ත
නෑ යාම තමයි
නේ 30 විතර
කවුද මෙයාගේ නම
අජින්ත පිටපස්සේ
අයිනද ඊට ඕකේ Yeah, Ajin. Yeah, your request is specifically for exempting 31st. So then I supported it exactly like that and said, okay, this is the situation. Done. Now I can't go again, Mother. 31st, no exam.
first තියෙනවද පළවෙනිද තියෙන්නේ
I don't know. මේක තාම set up කරලා නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලෝ මං කිව්ව set up කරන්න කලින් 31 මුකුත් දාන්න එපා කියලා. මේකට 31 1යි කියලා දැම්මම මම හරි. So basically now 31st is excellent.
සාමාන්‍ය හවසට දෙන්නේ last time වගේ හවසට නේ
කියන්න බෑ. schedule එක තමයි. මම කියලා තියෙන්නේ 31st දාන්න පාගේ. ඒක approve. email එකත් තිබුණා ඒකත් approved. හැබැයි මේ request තියෙද්දන්න තව කොලෙක් SMS එකෙන් තියෙන everyone will get the official email. Yeah, so this I can do that. Right, now with Maltego, basically if you load it up, this is the home screen, right? Now
අතන entity palette එකේ කියලා person කියලා type කරනවා. Entity palette කියලා දෙවෙනි මෙතන වෙන්නේ.
Okay, so everybody is in this screen?
Yeah. Voice screen එකේ ආයි ගන්න බෑ.
Right. So now what we'll do is basically for OSing, like for Maltego, I have a lecture on also. I'll publish this. What we want to do is to differentiate firstly two things. Okay. First one is what Maltego can do. Okay, and what the investigators must do. So there's two use cases, and these are the two use cases that we're going to do. First one is discovery OSM, and this is automatically finding data from open sources, and then the next one is intelligent structuring, and which is what we are going to do in the second part, and that is manually like doing the same use case that we did last week using the tool. Okay, so we'll do the first one. Now, to clarify the tool, what stage would this tool fit into? Based on your just brief look with the tool, which OSing stage does it fit to? Okay.
Collection again.
Collection again towards analysis. Okay, so move towards collection, but you can go a little bit towards processing and then part of analysis also. Okay, and then basically key characteristics is one of the key things that we are looking at today's data transforms. So here they use the word transforms. Basically what that does is it connects to external data sources, external servers, and extracts relevant information in terms of the entity that you have defined, and then creates the graph automatically, creates the entity graph automatically, which you did manually in the task. Okay, so shall we try this out? Okay, so Java, I have the link because this CSS only update 21, and when installing, did you take this? I hope you did. Utilities. Okay, utilities means they have the default set of transforms, and you have to take that. Okay, so this transforms is takes an entity and queries a data source or logic, and then returns the data related to that entity. Okay, so you can think of that as an automatic relationship discovery. That's loosely how we can think of this. And yeah, so this is the home screen. Now in Maltego there's two main things. One is the entity and one is the relationship. Okay, this is basic how the basic graphs are working. So this is the entity, these are entities, and this is the relationship. Okay, shall we do something? We'll create an entity graph for yourself. Okay, how do you do this? Is there again what kind of entity are you? Person, right? So what you need to do is first go to new and get a new graph, and from the side panel there's a whole lot more here, whole lot here. You have to select the relevant one. So you can go can of course search person here, or you can then add the person entity. Okay. So now for each entity, what you need to do first is define the attributes. Okay, so we have John Doe. How do you define the attributes? Simple.
Name. first name surname දුන්නා full name එක ගත්තා.
You can of course do the full name or do the first name and last name and to combine.
Yeah.
You want that first? Done? Right. Okay, so if somebody else is, now think of this situation, somebody else is creating a link analysis graph for you. What particular entities would they then go to? Okay, now first node is there.
Social.
What else would you get into?
Social.
Social media, okay. So this name and social media.
Job.
Okay, professional info, like job, okay. What else?
Family friends.
Family members, person, okay, family. There's two key things before this, all of this.
Email.
Email. Right, so what we'll do is now I'll show you the way that transformers work. Did you, when you loaded up the library list, here, I want you to install this transform. Have I been found? Did you install this? You have to manually install. So go to the home screen and then, so I've already installed, so that is why it says uninstall. So
Home
if it's
screen.
not installed, you'll have this, the install button. So for example, so I'll show you one. So here, so this is transformers from Multigo itself.
Sir, ඒ home screen එක close කරලා තිබුණොත් කොහොමද යන්නේ ඒක? home screen එක close කරලා තිබුණොත් නෑ ඒක නෑ close කරලා තිබුණොත් කොහොමද යන්නේ? වැරදිද?
Windows.
ආ.
Okay, so select that. Now I'm just doing one now. So let's say cyber threat intelligence. I want this as the transformer. Go here and install and say yes. And then it will download the data source. This is not the exact data source, but links to but I want you to do this. Okay, have I been on?
Cyber.
Okay, so when it is done, you'll get this, right? It will basically give you the summary of the number of servers queried with the data sources and the specific number of transforms. Like, I'll show you one example. So then 17, 288 transform, 30 entities, and that is done. So you have to read because these are the sources where I took the information and then finish. Okay? Did you complete this?
In progress.
Done?
In progress.
Still
Done.
doing? Any problems? Let me know.
Cyber security එකයි right.
Mods එක ගත්තා.
Ready.
ඉස්කෝලේ බැවිලා කට්ටියත් එක්ක ගෙවල් වලට ඔයා එක පාඩම් කරනවා. ඔබේ කාර්යය වැටලා ඉන්නේ.
තව එක ඩ්‍රයිවර් කෙනෙක් ආවොත් මොනවද වෙන්නේ? තව එක ඩ්‍රයිවර් කෙනෙක් සෙට් වුණා වගේ ඩ්‍රයිවර් කෙනෙක් සෙට් වුණා. ඒක හරියම රෑ ඩ්‍රයිව් කරන්න බෑ. නැත්තම් ඉඳලා පාන්දරේ ජැෆ්නා කොච්චර වෙනවද? අන්නේ රෙඩි වෙන්න
දායි කුප්පිම දායි.
Okay, so now what I want you to do is go to the new graph and then what is this entry? It's an email address, right?
Yeah.
Click email address over here and then what? At your email address, your personal email address, the one that you have, not the university one. It's a little use for email address. So I use the
ඒක අපි දාන data යා වෙනම capture කරගන්නවා හරි එකක් යාගේ තියෙනවා. දැන් සම්බලයක් විතර අපි try කරන hash එක try කරොත් rainbow එකේ යා ගොඩක් වෙලාවට අපි ඒක save කරගන්නවානේ.
hash එක try කරනවා.
කියන්නේ අපි මගේ password එක hash එකද කියලා බලන්න check කරොත් සමහරවිට යා මගේ ඒ ගහන password එක අරගෙන hash කරනවානේ.
වෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි එහෙමයි.
මේකෙත් ඒ වගේ කරනවා.
session එකේ show කරලා close කරාම එක අයින් වෙනවා. බොහෝ විට මේකේ. නැත්නම් ඒකට ස්ට්‍රක් නේ වෙනෝනේ. මේකේ වෙන්නේ බොහෝ විට දැන් ඔයා query කරන එක තියෙන්නේ. ඒක session එකේ මේ session එකේ විතරයි store වෙන්නේ. load කරන හැම වෙලාවෙම මේක අයින් load වෙනවා. ඒක store වෙලා තියෙනවා. මොකද ඒක file එක
මගේ එයා mining වලට පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ මොකද tool එක දැන් tool එක mining වලට දැන් හිතමු සර් ගන්න data ටික මමත් ගන්නවා කියන්නේ සර්ගේ data වලින් මට මෙයා එනවද කියලා වගේ මම අහනවා
තේරුණා.
දැන්
මගේ email
address එක සර් දන්නේ නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මම දැන් මගේ email විදියට මගේ email address මෙතන ගන්නවා.
යා ඒක නෑ නෑ.
සර්ට source එක
එතකොට ඒක නෑ. ඒක මෙන්න.
එහෙම වෙන්නේ
එහෙම දුක් මලඩක් කරනවා කියලා කියනවා. එහෙම වෙන්න. A good question. So if your graph will not show it as another link or another relationship, that is the massive problem. That won't happen. So there's no problem. Okay, so I have my email address and then here, okay.
Yeah.
Right, so this is what I want you to do now. Right click, okay, and go to the all transforms. Right, now this is basically a combination of transforms that were already available by default, but we install one specifically for this task, and that is ever been on, right? So if you install that properly, it will be here. Click that, and then do the first. Now Remember that complete installation graph thing? It showed 288 specific transforms, right? This is one. So here, for that category, it has 3 specific transforms. So what I want to do is get all pages of an email related to the given address. I do that. I need to run. Right, now it's doing the mining.
output transform output transform
ඒක ඉතින් ඒක ඔයා have been port click කරන්නේ click කරපම මේක click
කර ඉස්සෙල්ලා ක්ලික් වුණා
ඉස්සුද
වට්ටස්සේ මේ
ඒක වෙන්නේ මේ මට ආවේ ක්ලික් කරනවා. දෙන්න කලින් ටෙස්ට් කරලා දැන් යා ලිමිට් එක බ්ලොක් කරලා එන්න. මේ ඉන්නේ මේ ඔයාගේ හොඳටම ගල්ලා තියෙන බරත්තන් ගල.
මේ බ්‍රීච් පාස්
ඔයාගේ ඊමේල් එක බ්‍රීච් වෙන නැහැ. මේ හැම එකේම වාගේ account එකක් තියෙනවා.
ඔව් ඒක නිසා
ඒ වලින් බ්‍රීච් වෙනවා තියෙන්නේ.
ඒ කියන්නේ ඊමේල් ඒ කියන්නේ account එක breach වෙලා
account එක breach වෙනවා.
ඒතර LinkedIn එකත් breach වෙලා
ඔව් කලින් breach වෙනවා. ඔය link එක කලින් කරපු hack එකක් වුණා. ඒක වගේ breach වෙලා.
තවදිනේ පාසල් දෙක ඉස්සර දිවිත් එක ඒක ඉන්ස්ටෝල් කරන්න වින්ඩෝ ගිහලා හෝම් එකකට වින්ඩෝ ඉස්සෙල් වෙන්න වින්ඩෝ එකට දැන් ඉස්සෙල් වෙන්න වින්ඩෝ එකට ඊට පස්සේ හෝම් ගන්න මෙතනින් ඒක අරන් එකෙන් ඉන්ස්ටෝල් කරන්න හැදුවා මේ ෆෝන් කියන එක පල්ලට බලන්න ඔය තියෙනවා තමයි ඔය සෙට් එකේ කරලා තියෙනවා හැදුවා මේ ෆෝන් ඉතල හන්නේ කොහොමද ඒක නේද ඔව් වෙන්නේ
basic and search with other data points that you know that is relevant to your name, right? Your email, you know, your what you call the address, you know, and your phone number, you know, right? And from this now it has generated a whole lot of nodes, right? And these are directed from the transform, right? Now what you generally have is what you have now is basically clusters of graphs, right? Most of you would be having 2 or 3. So the first thing that you need to do is to first clean it up. Now, example, now if you take the phone number, so phone number. So I think you've done 2. First one is the number lookup. It's from another registry. I can't remember the exact, so but it's a number lookup, right? And number lookup in most cases would, if you have used your number for online services or whatever, it will connect you with your name. In most cases, not all, in most cases, right? For me, correct. Okay. Connected with my name. And if you do for your number web search, you'll get a whole lot of other hits. And even in my case, not a lot of them are correct. What is this? The web search. It's simply, you can do it yourself. In Google, search your name with the quotes. Those hits will be there in this. But does it say that all of them are relevant to you? No. Of course, your same number kind of thing, that string will be there in other places, right? That is not a unique string. That will come up in different places, even with the country code. You know, in my case also, I mean, hits that are not exactly relevant to me. So what do you need to do? You have to clean the nodes that are not relevant. Now, for all of these things, now remember, this is not the hard part. This is actually the tool mining data. the tool will not be able to say what are the relevant nodes, what are the irrelevant nodes. That is the work of the analyst. For the first task is clean the graph. Okay, remove the nodes that you clearly see, okay, these are not relevant. Okay, then even for the connections that are already built, you have to then classify this. And in the manual task, we had two types. What are the two types of relationships? Confirmed and suspected. You have to do the exact same thing here. Now, in this particular case, it's straightforward because you know your case, right? So there would not be suspected. Suspected, you also don't know the problem. So in most cases, you will then define the relationships as confirmed and suspected. Okay, define clean the relationships. Okay, so here you remove it itself, and then here you clean the relationships where in certain cases you can have multiple other categories also. Confirmation strength 10, 8, 5, 1. Those are where a lot of relationships are there, right? Number 2. Number 3, then you are going to cross relate the nodes with each other. Now what you already have is clusters of graphs, right? But that is not what we want into the day. What we want into the day is like the one that you did in the board that day. You have to try to build the relationship between clusters of networks, and that is number 3. So after you do all of these 3 things, you have the overall network, right? And that network will then be used to answer intelligence questions. For example, if you're doing OSINT for a person and you want to find a starting point, you can first build the network, and in certain cases, lot of these nodes will be in one graph. The node is connected with a whole lot of other networks also. And you know for sure, okay, this node has to be true because for this entity, from this transformer, this particular finding has connection between different clusters. So you can then arrive at the conclusion, okay, this can be true. This is your starting point. And from that you again start to build. Okay? So can you try to do that to your graph? Now you ask some of you ask, okay, there are irrelevant information. Delete. Or your company database. You can't expect that to be in a public transform now. So anyways, you can use this function. So this is kind of like creating a custom transform, right? So it's like macro. So we can so here if you go to here, this you can think this as a Multigo scripts and sets of transformer filters that are executed in sequence. You can define your own thing, right? So this is basically for custom data sets, so custom sources. And so what is the scenario here? You have, this is from public sources, but you have another key source that is your internal set that you don't want to expose it to outside party, or it's not available now, but you also want to have that to bring it into the multi-go graph. So then you can use this. Clear? Okay, I think any questions on multi-go? So I think this will be a key OSINT tool, because some of the other tools are not OSINT tool. We can use it for OSINT. I showed them. It's not exactly OSINT. It's a device like Internet of IoT targeted software. This is purely OSINT. Now, if you see, I will have the lecture note also. If you search on Multigo, so this video, ultimate OSINT tool. So in a lot of the tool rankings, this comes at the top, right? So this is the YouTube video.
month. Bangui month which area is local area?
profiling
Metin technique dane ho tama.
So there's also some of the best practices. Now, when you're doing graphication, the one best practice is you don't need to create discovery and intelligent structure in the same Lego graph. Why? So, discovery is basically having the whole big thing, and then structuring is basically cleaning it out. And then, so best practice is sometimes you would find that after cleaning out, after you go a little bit forward, you say, okay, I deleted the wrong node, then you deleted the report information, so create versions. So these are second nature, not big things. Right, I think, any questions on Antigo? So that sheet also, I think, oh, submission link is there.
Huh?
Lab sheet, every lab has a submission. Details are satisfied there only, makala.
एक सर अपने सर कीबोर्ड की तरह सर्च करा क्लीन करा एंटिटी कह दो सब इमेज इमेज
We should make a visual representation of your final draft.
ओके
Screenshot
मेरे एक्सपोर्ट कराना एक्सपोर्ट इमेज जाके कराना
sorry, export image. So the screenshot will be a bit hard for me to read. Right? So remove any tricky or questionable notes, and then because every lab has to have some.
सर दास दे ओवर दास दे
Oh, I'll have okay, sensitive layer, you know, do for somebody else. Sorry, any questions on Antigo? Familiar with them, so we first covered the cycle, the production cycle, and the concepts. Then we talked about specific intelligence selection tools. Remember, I mentioned 3 main tools, right? First one, recon.ng. Second one,
Shadow.
Third one, Manchego. So, 3, I mean, I think widely used tools in this domain. And then, if you look at the cycle, so we started with the plan, the data protocol, planning, and then we discussed about collection, various types of collections, and then we talked about different data analysis techniques, cleaning, and the cycles related to the pre-processing engineering, and then we talked about various analysis techniques like different classes of machine learning and some use cases, particular use cases related to OSC. So the next lab will be, I think I mentioned to you also. So in the lecture, I covered the theory related to machine learning and could apply a lot of hands-on work. So the next lab will be on machine learning, using machine learning to OSing a set of OSing data. And then we now look at this learning outcome. Now, in a OSing project, so I'm getting this in with experience, sometimes the most important thing is basically the presentation. Because there's a client and you're doing the project to a client, and the client is paying, right? And but so in overseas projects, the outcome is in the report, overseas findings report, right? With your recommendations and your findings, right? So in this case, it becomes very important for you to present it in a way that shows your outcome, also shows the key pieces of information, right? Now, remember that this is actually a bit challenging because now with OSing, like I said, like I've told multiple times, there's a whole lot of data that you are extracting with OSing, right? So then you do the analysis also, and also you will arrive at a lot of conclusions also in actual projects. Now, the difficulty there is, okay, from this huge data set, from these large number of conclusions, what do we present to the client, right? So it has to be done in certain ways. So what we do is, so presenting your OS in findings. So this is how to the reporting component, and this is including the question or including the information that addresses. Now, firstly, everything has to be directed around your intelligence object. That is core. So that is the purpose of preparing that. So remember, in the protocol, you started with the intelligence objective. That is the central focus. Of course, the report will also reflect that. And then you have the intelligence, the questions, right? But when you're doing this in practice, what you find is there's a lot of findings in certain cases that relates to the question. And then you have to determine, okay, how do I present this in a way that produces value to the client? Okay, so it's basically, so what? You will find a lot of information in OSINT projects, but when you present this sort of questions that client does, okay, so what do I gain from this? What is the value that I have? Right? So your challenge here is to find. Now, initially there was a case of signal and noise with the data. Okay? Anyway, you have to remove the signal and find the relevant data and then arrive at the intelligence points. The next challenge is you would also have some irrelevant intelligence also. And in that case, you have to then filter out the irrelevant findings or intelligence outcomes and then only select the ones that are relevant to your objective. Right? So, there's no specific rule for this. What we'll cover today is, first part of the lecture, I'll cover some well-known best practices for reporting OSINT. Okay, so there will be a question also for this in your paper. Okay, so first one is bluff statement. So last time I did it online. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so tips for effective OSINT reporting. First tip. Now, there's something called a bluff statement. So, one of the key recommendations that OSINT practitioners give is, for each section that results are reported, include a bluff statement. Okay, so bluff statement is a concise summary of the key findings at the beginning of the report. Now, basically, for each section, each result section, you start with the bluff statement. Okay, so one example for bluff statement. After conducting extensive OSINT analysis, it is evident that company X poses high cybersecurity risk due to lax data encryption. Immediate action is recommended. Right, so what's the heaping? For each section that reports results, you include the bluff statement. So what is bluff? Bottom line first up. So bottom line first up. So that is the meaning of the bluff statement. And the key thing is each section you will of course support your finding in the result section, how you arrived at this, but each section starts with that, so that the so what question, if somebody asks, okay, so what, okay, this is why. Okay, so first one. Now second one is, now this is something that generally we don't find as important. People also don't say that this is important, but what we find is in lot of OSN reports that the reports that have been read, people reports hadala මිනිස්සු කියවපු reports ගත්තොත්, ඒ කියන්නේ useful වෙච්ච reports ගත්තොත්, lot of the reports have been arranged in a way that is a story is told. So you tell the story behind the OSN project with the data. Basically, you start with introducing the problem and investigation. You present the timeline and conclude with action or recommendation. So basically, you have this sort of structure. First, we introduce the problem. Now, this is basically the research paper structure. Again, the same concept. So you are telling kind of a story, but supporting the story with data points from your investigation. Right? Second point. Third point. Now, again, basically now in the projects that I've done, in most cases, I think all projects, the consumer of the report was business, not technical teams, but the business. So, a project actually ආවේ ඒ OSN කරන internal කට්ටිය කියන නැති හින්දා business එක තීරණය කළා, okay, we have an external team to do this. So then the report is also consumed by the business people, right? So you have to first determine that not all reports could be, there's no report that fits all target groups. If it's a technical team that you're doing the OSN, then possibly you can include a lot of technical stuff in the report, right? But if it's a business team that you're targeting, then of course you look at the high level information or the high level risks and recommendations, and then you adjust the tone and the terminology that you use in the report based on the target group. Okay. Yeah, so particularly when we are looking at, so I've seen this with experience also. Now in these reports, if it's a business targeted audience, you always have to say in terms of the business impact. So basically they would not, if you write and say, okay, these servers have 25 critical vulnerabilities and that is the conclusion, that would not get a, they would say, okay, vulnerability is bad, that they would know. But in terms of business impact, they would not get a clear understanding of clear picture on the level of risk. So then your challenge is, okay, given the context, given the nature of the data, given your application stack, 25 critical vulnerabilities in your servers, it will have this kind of risk. And you have to then say, okay, this is the business impact from that piece of information, right? And that is targeting, if it's business relevance, translated finding into the risks and costs, and then, okay, for example, blocking these domains mitigates about a 50,000 phishing risk. Okay, so there's ways that we can quantify some of these things, but that is out of scope for the course. Right? And again, finally, so you now remember this is a technical report, right? It's not a newspaper article, it's a technical report. For any technical document, you have to cite your sources, right? How you arrived at, verify the findings. Now, one key thing, why do we do that protocol sheet? A data protocol sheet is currently. Can somebody tell me the answer? What is the reason for doing the data protocol sheet? Because you are doing the project, you anyway know the intelligence objectives and questions, right? Why do you create a data protocol sheet? The data protocol sheet is, one key purpose of the data protocol sheet is, if another team does the same project using the same protocol, they have to arrive at something similar to your conclusions. That's the point. This is similar to research also. Research, we sometimes create something called a systematic protocol for maybe the literature reviews and all that. And the purpose of that is, if somebody else follows the same method, they would arrive at something similar to your conclusions. And this is exactly the same here. So this ensures replicability. If somebody else uses your protocol and finds vastly different conclusions, then that's a problem. Okay? It will not be exactly the same, but overall in the same direction. Right?
සර් යූස් කරන ටූල් වල රිපෝටින් ලෙවල් එකට සපෝටින් නැත්නම් දැන් එයා අපේ ඒක ගන්න ඇනලිසිස් පාර්ට් එක විතරයි. අපි ටූල් යූස් කරනවානේ. ඒවයි රිපෝටින් අපිට ලෙවල් එකට නැත්නම් අපි ජස්ට් ඒව ගන්න ඇනලිසිස් පාර්ට් එක විතරයි.
Yeah, man. From most of the tools, you can get a report based on the analysis outcomes of that report. උදාහරණයක් කියන්නම්. So from Maltego, let's take there's an entity and you do the search and all the analysis and we create that final graph using Maltego. Then the question is, from that overall graph, what actually comes into the report? Then Maltego, you can of course the whole thing with the relevant data sources stacker or XML you can take that. But in most cases, for the final report, you don't need the whole thing. එතකොට දැන් මේ Maltego tool එක දන්නේ exactly from the overall thing what is relevant to your intelligence question කියන්නේ. Like it is trade off. Sometimes if you see that the whole thing is relevant to be included in the report, then of course tool output take it as a visual report or chart or whatever, and you can directly plug it into the report as an annex or as a chart. We've done that, but you have to be very careful around directly including tool outputs into a voicing report. Because then voicing to our practitioner ගන්නේ උමර tool වල reports එක එකතු කරලා දෙන එකට නෙවෙයි නේ. එම උනා රෙගුලටම කරගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක වෙන්නේ අර when you have a smaller tools, you have to find relevant information, and from this relevant information, you have to triage. Right? This tool has this finding. You have another data source, another analysis, another tool. You have to connect them, find the overall links, and then that is what comes into the report, right? So directly, if the report is for technical team, then maybe directly you can add this tool reports as the annex or appendix or whatever, right? So that you have your sources. But generally for business reports, we generally don't directly use the tool produce report or outcomes in that kind of audit for that kind of audits. That's too much information. Finally, so this is so some key things when you are reporting. This is generally the case with a lot of qualitative reports. You have to avoid your own bias. Sometimes you start a project where you start with your own conclusion and you are trying to find data that fits into that conclusion. So basically there is the bias that you have. For these kinds of things, it should always be driven from the data. Conclusion should be driven from the data. Not that you have a conclusion and then you fit the data to fit into that conclusion, right? So this is avoiding the bias, right? And finally, you have now in all cases, the good voicing reports always go with the visualization. Otherwise, people won't read it. That's human nature. You can have a lot of tools now. I think this is from a different. This is from a tool, so that is voicing. This is for dashboards. Maltego, this is for relationship mapping. That graph may be a portion of the graph may be good for the mapping, right? And the heat maps. So these are examples of reports. Okay, so I think now these are not rules. You don't need to do all of these things on your OEC reports, but these are some of the best practices. If you follow them, your report will be consumed a bit better from your audience, right? Okay, so that's one from your peer development. If you have questions, let me know. Psycho episode में बोल रहा है
Iko basta
ऐसे ही रोड में नहीं करते
Exactly.
Okay, so final section, final theory section. Now you see that this is the one that I quickly covered, and this is the final one. Again, a bit of theoretical component. As you see, the legal and ethical considerations in OEC. Now, generally, for OEC course, you have to have this component, a big theory, but we have to do this because there's a lot of these reports are very tricky business, right? Now even your activity, you saw that it's a very tricky thing, right? You only need the friend's phone number or email address, right? And you can find out where they have created accounts, and in tricky sites they have visited. If there's a leak, then
submission कर दादी
there's a careful. You have to deal with that in a very careful way, right? Okay, so we'll discuss some key points now. Basically, you see privacy and always think that now there's a clear privacy problem here, right? Always think by most of the things that we did in the course, we are trying to extract some information that is there within, right? Now, what is privacy? Data privacy. Your previous lecturer also might have mentioned.
PII data.
PII data. Yeah. So there's a lot of questions with personal identifiable information, right? Now, what we did do in previous session? Yes, purely
PII data.
PII data, right?
Yeah.
As starting points, your name, address,
Email address, phone number.
So that goes directly against this digital privacy concept, right? Now the thing is basically in OSC, how do we balance this out? Now there are certain things where in Europe, digital privacy is a big strong concept, right? Privacy. Now because of that reason, there's a lot of OSC projects with European, especially personal identifying information, if that is relevant for the OEC project, very hard to do that. Why? Even if you extract this information, you can't legally present it in a report. That is illegal because if you extracted personal identifying information and you reported it, especially if you are reporting like maybe nobody will know if it is reported to a private project. If it is a public project, you will be sued, right? because it's very strong the privacy rights. So Article 5, digital privacy is a fundamental right. For them, privacy is a fundamental right, like food and all that for us. So privacy for them is fundamental right, and that is why GDPR is also linked in there, right? So basically now there's a discussion where how do we balance these things? So, for example, legal rights of the individual, security, innovation, and privacy. So, what people have done this is now this report. I have this report posted in your post page also. Basically, this balance you have to analyze based on the region. Okay, let's have a look. This is interesting. Now, okay, so this is we are looking at privacy and OSing and the security and relevant ones, and then this bracket is innovation. This is where, I mean, the other side of the coin is if we block everything, all things basically based on privacy. You can't do lot of the projects like data mining projects, prediction, trend analysis. All of these things are out of the picture, right? So then innovation from that side will also take a hit. So what we do is we look at these things. So legal rights of the subject. This layer focus on the individual, the rights that the individual have on their personal information, PII. Security. So this is about protecting the data from unauthorized access. Now if you take data. What's the three key aspects of security that if we capture security with three aspects? Yes? CIA. C is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? So how does the confidentiality for the information, integrity of the information, and availability of the information be affected by the other variables? So I'm just defining it now. We'll look at it in the next layer. Next slide. Third layer is how the data is used for developing new products, services, and improvements of the technology. Okay. So we'll see how this is done in various regions. So in US, the report concludes that this is the case. See whether you agree. So we are going to now look at this balance, these variables in terms of various regions, right? Because it differs based on the region. Do you agree? So I think I would also agree. For US, there is no digital privacy law. You have a search. There is no strong digital privacy law. And that is why a lot of and that is actually a contributing factor for their technical Silicon Valley and all that to have these the products being developed. That is a contributing factor, and they don't have that for a reason. If they have a strong digital privacy law that blocks companies from doing a lot of these things, a lot of these companies would not have the product itself, right? So this is why US develops the product, it gets adopted in other regions, but sometimes some of the features and functionalities are blocked based on their regional privacy things. Example, iPhone chargeable. You know that, right? So US in Europe, if in US of course Apple they release port is changing, charge ekane samatha charge ek venas, charge NVIDIA ma denne sam. So in US you have to have USB-C. In Europe, okay, I think that is the case. Europe, so if they want to market it in Europe, it has to have that standardization. But not in US. But in US, the freedom is there, right? So US, this is the situation now, and that is the reason why a lot of the voicing products also driven from US. because their privacy laws actually allows this kind of thing to be done, right? So that's US. What is this? Make a media out of the monkey and this is a big thing that Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, data leak for this is basically for summarize. There's a company called Cambridge Analytica, I think. They were collecting data from social media profiles so that their voting behaviors and all that can be mapped, right? And unfortunately, the information got leaked. Cambridge Analytica, let's quickly have a look. Those days a big thing, but then okay, so I have this video, but it's not playing. We'll try to get it here.
Some elections 2016.
In 2014, you may have taken a quiz online, something that looked like this. And if you did, you probably shared your personal data and your friends' personal data with a company that worked for President Trump's 2016 campaign. Here's how it happened. It begins with a research firm, Cambridge Analytica, CA partnered with a UK-based academic, Alexander Cogan, who was using Facebook data for research purposes. Quizzes were sent to around 300,000 Americans. They looked innocuous. Over 100 personality tests to agree or disagree with. And you got paid less than $5. But there was a catch. To take the survey, you had to log into Facebook, which gave Cogan access to your profile, including your birth date, location, and most importantly, your Facebook likes. Cogan combined the quiz results with your Facebook data to develop a psychometric model, a sort of personality profile. He then combined this with photo records and sent them to Cambridge Analytica. CA claimed that these models were the heart of how they profiled you, your neuroses, and other exploitable traits.
Basically, what they did was poll and in the poll, to submit the poll, you have to log in. Google basically certain polls you have to log in,
Yeah.
and then when you log in, you just give access to
Facebook.
you just already then click, right? Similar thing, Facebook poll, but you have to log into your Facebook, and then they give a very basic questionnaire. But when they logged in, all your Facebook information like likes and the other data that you can take from your Facebook, that was also shared. And then they mapped them to a model. So this model now can predict the behavior of you based on the data, and they use it for voting, prediction of voting patterns.
Grabbed personal data of your Facebook friends and compiled similar profiles of them. In just months, 270,000 people took Cogan's survey, and the data of up to 87 million friends was also harvested, close to 1/4 of all US Facebook users. CA then used that data to target people, maybe you, with political messaging. CA said this targeting helped the Trump campaign strategy, but the campaign disputes this. Cogan's work claimed to be for academic research, but he also shared your information with Cambridge Analytica, a violation of Facebook's policies. So, was it a data breach? Facebook says no, that no passwords were stolen and no systems were infiltrated. But Mark Zuckerberg has said it was a breach of trust between Facebook and its users. The US Federal Trade Commission is investigating the case.
Okay, so this is this a overseas project? No, is it? So no law broken. You clicked accept.
Yeah.
Now law is broken, but now the post is overseen. Was this overseen? See, the Facebook profile is also public.
Yeah.
Most of the data that they
Okay.
they extracted data of 87 million. Population times multiple. And then 87 million records, and then based on the model, okay, behaviors, they send the political message, right? And then they say that it helped Trump get elected. So the thing is here, or now, where did the company work? UK. Where did the data and all this, everything happened in US. And there's a reason for that. You can't do that kind of thing in the Europe or UK, because the privacy laws are stronger, and in that case, in UK, they wanted to do that. They had to specifically say, okay, your data will be going into a model, and this model will be then given to these people, the consumers of Cambridge Analytica or Trump's campaign, and all of these things have to be specifically stated when you click accept. If you don't read it, then of course that's your thing, but that kind of thing is not there because of the US user base, right? So I think this is true then, right? So privacy in US, not even with privacy, there are a lot of things. With other things, the innovation or the technology aspect has had a higher weightage. Guns, so similar case. So we'll look at a different region. China. Where you are think going? Do you agree?
China.
Yes, right.
Facebook के हम use करना.
No, nothing. Lot of social media ban,
Yeah.
security and all of that from the person's side of point of view. Legal rights of the state has a higher weightage. Right? You. Clearly, this is the top notch,
GDPR.
right? So, in terms of legal rights for the individual, then European Union, because it has GDPR, it has data privacy laws and all that. So, the protection that they have in terms of their own data, PII data and privacy is much higher than the other nations. If PDP data cannot, the new they copy it. If you copy cannot touch like it, I was in the workshops also. GDPR copy is what we are going to have. PDP, you know, right? Personal Data Protection Act. Consultation period like 18. So when the law is introduced, you might have covered this, right? PDP, no?
Yeah. Not yet. Next week.
Right, so, yeah. So it's in the consultation stage for people give opinions on it, and it will be enacted very soon. Okay, so I think now having said that, now the question is basically, so when you are doing OSing, particularly where Europe situation worldwide standard, the standard with Europe, with person identifiable information and data protection, is the worldwide standard. Would always survive. So it's basically last time I said another question also. Until question you got that legal, ethical, and other kind of taking final question. Fourth question. So this is basically your point of view. Some people say that is the worldwide standard. A lot of the voice in projects will be not feasible, not practical. Ada gara gak terangkan, orang bola kita kena lagi mereka kan ada yang PIA yang aku mau extract. You can do it personally, but you can't present it anywhere, right? You can't include it in the report as a violation. Common restrictions. China में तो वो यूज़ करा तो वो उल्टा गन डेटा गन टेन है ये तो कुछ लोकल Gmail ने Facebook ने मैं एक लोग की नेटवर्क से करती है ना एक तो मतलब रेगुलेट कर लाती है then वो डेटा सोर्सेस के लिए इनके बाद हम वो उड़क के हम ब्लॉक इनसाइड they would have tool लगा रहा है वो डन है no data sources it will be empty thing right so that is not privacy of the individual those data or the information of all the citizens and all that the government will have access. In EU, even the government doesn't have access. Even you can't force the government to, for example, from a company get the information of an individual without the government, like it has to come from the, from the courts. Like there has to be legal order, a warrant or something. Otherwise, that data is not allowed from the company to be sent to the government even. I think that is the case. Law economic checker run. So basically, so it's some people say if that is the case, obviously we go to it. But some would say that with relevant protections, for example, you are doing something for the client, and the client has given explicit approval to use any information related to the company. That is there online. So then of course, then yes. So with appropriate protections, maybe people say that okay, even with high emphasis on privacy and data protection laws, still OSC could survive with correct systematic procedures and protocols. So it's a discussion. There is no clear answer because privacy is a very complicated concept. Not OSC it is complicated. Privacy, the concept of privacy is complicated. Okay, so I think my theory cover sections like so I cover those two quickly. So these are the two synthesis and presenting of intelligence findings and accessing legal and ethical considerations. Any questions? We'll have your fourth question will be based on that. Okay, so what could happen is I will give you a case, like a practical case, and I will say, okay, in this case, you are supposed to do OSC project, okay? But there are certain implications in terms of privacy and legal aspects. How would you balance those things out in doing the OSC project? Okay, so it's a context-based thing. It is not from legal theory, okay? So the question is not from legal theory, it's based on your reasoning on how you can go with the OSC project, what measures that you would take so that you would not get sued, and how do you balance privacy, legal issues and OSC. Okay, so that will be the fourth question. Fourth question is basically OSC presentation and the legal and ethical issues. Without your question. Anything to clarify? Okay, so I think but I overall reason here overall standing Come a day, and we live in a ये justification नहीं करना हम बना ठीक है exact right or wrong answer oh right justification क्या होती है इसमें ये क्या है हमें डबल ने में प्रोजेक्ट इन करना पूरा क्या है वो हरी हमने आई क्या हुआ है क्या okay right so we've covered the theory components what we do now is I can show you the questions and have a look. So it will be the same kind of structure. So this is last time's paper. So this is the first question. So each question, let's see whether you have anything to clarify. Okay, you'll be hired to perform penetration testing on the newly launched online web banking application for financial services company. How can OSINT activities or techniques support your penetration testing objectives? What are your answers? Read the question first.
Check the web,
What are your answers?
check the web servers. Collecting servers detail, open port, and users, who's using this, those detail, and we on the open that shorten and those things we can subdomain and those things DNS.
Okay. So when you are answering this, okay, the key thing is you have to clearly differentiate between the boundary between attack and OSC. Okay, any answer related to attack, pen testing, this out of the picture, but if you wrote that is wrong. All the answers related to OSC, open source data intelligence, comes into here.
Techniques about your penetration testing objective.
Activity of pen test support the pen testing objectives, but
Oh.
OSC activities,
Okay.
not pen testing. Would you write code scanning? What you were ground level? I'm asking how can?
මැප් කරා වගේ අපි ඇටැක් එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් විදිහේරම අර අපිට කලින් සතිය කරා ඒ කියන්නේ අපි අර ඇක්ටිවිටි එකක් ඇටැක් එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් විදිහේරම මැප් කරලා එහෙම penetration testing පැත්තෙන්
ඒක ඔයාලා කියන pen testing වල objectives. මම මෙතන අහලා තියෙන්නේ මේ question එකේ අහලා තියෙන්නේ OSC activities කොහොමද penetration testing objectives support කරන්නේ. तो ताम मतलब हरिका में
स्कोप එක බලන්න. ස්කෝප් එක බලලා අටැක් එක හොයාගෙන ඒකට අපි පබ්ලික් තියෙන data ටික නේ හොයාගන්න. ඒකට අපිට පුළුවන් voice ID use කරලා මේ data වලට තියෙන attack මොනවද කියන හොයාගෙන මේක predefine කරන්න. ඒක හොයාගන්න.
वाले आंसर के पेमेंट penetration testing वाला बोल रहे हैं මේගොල්ලෝ you been hired, okay, you are doing actual attack, right, your white box, right, your scope of your answer is one. I give you one answer, scoping. Then ඔයාගේ OSC penetration testing කියන project එකට scope එක හදාගන්න එක OSC one. Defining the scope of the pen testing. That is scoping. Your one is also finding other possible breach, open information about other possible breaches. Of course, supports pen testing. Yes. Two answers. Do you see how a relevant answer is here? मैं वाली ना आपको question. में black and white answers नहीं because in master's course. ये आंसर करता है सो ठीक है ये आंसर टिक නැහැ කියන්නේ හරි ආන්සර් එක නැත්නම් ළඟින් යනවා කියලා මම ලකුණු දෙන්නේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මේ okay. Now tell me three specific activities you would carry out and then what you will okay, pen test for scanning you improve or not? Pen testing for the finance organization, they have their own products online. You do code scanning.
Yes.
Make an answer scan. One or three activities.
Check servers and port scanning. Check server detail and port scanning.
So you are going to do port scanning as OSC. Any other answer? So he is not going to get port scanning. You are going to. Any other answers? Port scanning at the button. क्या ऑपोजिट कर रहा हूँ क्या नहीं कर तो मैं अभी आंसर सी रहा हूँ क्या तो लेते हैं और अभी मतलब प्रश्न भी नहीं है मेरे लिए क्लियर कट आंसर करते हैं Port scanning is a valid technique here, right? This white box. Organization already given you approval to the pen testing. If it's black box and you are trying to hide your activities, right? The target should not know that you're going to do this. Then, in that case, if you're adding port scanning, very risky, because you are trying to not get detected. They know that okay, somebody is doing the port scanning, and that is of course interacting with the object, may be considered part of the attack. You're trying to attack, so that you're trying to find the open port to attack. Intention is attack, clearly not OSing. Here, are you doing OSing to find the open ports and attack and do malicious, something malicious? No. This is white box. In pen testing, you are hired, like a year and you'll be hired to do penetration testing for the organization. You do penetration testing, you do whatever, and then give us the report. Of course, then you can do post scanning, no problem. It would not be attack. Attack in man. Clear? So if you write pen testing, you have to say why. Oh, scoping stage එකට අපි මෙයාට සර්වර්ස් ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. කාට pen testing කරන්න ඕන scope එක හදා ගන්න ඕන. ඒකට scan කරලා පුළුවන්. අවශ්‍ය නැතුව. මම කියන්නේ scanning very chance එකක් දෙන්නේ නෝනේ. post scanning test. ඕන කියනවා post scanning පස්සේ කරා මම post scanning එක ලියනවා මම කියන්නේ මට මේගොල්ලෝ stack එකේ මට ඕන ඉස්සෙල්ලා කොහෙන්ද ඉස්සෙල්ලා pen testing කරන්න කියන ඔයාලා. ඒකට මම post scan කරලා බලනවා ගොඩාක් කිසියම් සර්වර් open port කරගන්න තියෙනවා. that is my starting point. So my planning is based on that. Because there is no problem with getting post scanning here. It is not attack. It is white box. Advocacy, they know that you are going to do this. Okay? So when you are writing the answer, it has to be in that way. Okay?
So white box, black box කියන එකේ white box pen testing එකයි black box pen testing එකයි කියන එකේ තේරුම දන්නව නැහැ කියන එකද නැත්නම් අපි domain එකත් එක්ක attack කරනව නැහැ කියන එක.
නෑ white box black box කියලා කියන්නේ white box එකේදී black box is you are attacking, you are the attacker, you are the actor. White box එකේදී වෙන්නේ you're doing pen testing, the organization knows that you are authorized to do it.
ඒකනේ මට ඔයාලට අපි දැන් අත්‍තරම ගෙදරදී pen test එකක් කරා. අපි අත්‍තරම ගෙදරදී pen test එකක් කරා. හරි. එතෙන්දී black box කියන එක එයාලා අපිට scope එකේ දෙන black box කියන්නේ එයාලා log වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එළිය ඉඳන් API මේව තේරුම් ගන්න attack කරලා බලනවා pen test එක කරනවා. grey box කියලා කියන්නේ log වෙනවා. හැබැයි එයාලා domain එක ලොකුවට යන්නේ. white box කියලා එයාලා මේන් කරේ log වෙනවා. එයාලට privilege අපි දෙනවා users ලා වර්ග ටිකක් දෙනවා. ඒතකොට එයා සම්පූර්ණ domain එකම තමයි එයාලා test කරනවා. හරි. දැන් ඒක ඕරල්
අපේ
නෑ අපි මේ අතර ප්‍රැක්ටිස් එක කම්පැනි එකේ මට ෂුවර් නෑ ඒක
මම දන්න විදිහට ඒක ගන්න පුළුවන්.
pen testing type තුනක් තියෙනවා. black box, grey box, white box එකේ definition එක.
මොකක්ද ස්කෝප් එක උතන?
pen test එක කරන විතරයි. ඒක අපේ client කෙනෙක් pen testing එකක් ඉල්ලනවා අපේ දෙන solution එකට. එතකොට අපි ඒක පිට කම්පැනිට බාර දුන්නා. මොකද අර white box කියනකොට එයාලා කෝඩ් එකක් බලනවා. black box එකේදී එයාලා එළියෙන් විතර attack කරන්නේ.
ඔය කියන්නේ ටෙස්ටිං වලනේ මම කියන්නේ
නෑ attack pen test එක මොකද ඒතර pen test එක අතර black grey white කියලා
මම box කියලා කිව්වේ මේ white box red box මේ white black hat red black hat and white hat okay මම වැරදි වචන දෙක යූස් කරේ
අනේ ඒක හරියි එතකොට මේ
box නේ sorry
ඒක හරියි ගන්න
testing වල
හරියට. box and මම box කියලා කිව්වේ. ඒක හරි. black box කියන්නේ පේන්නේ නැහැ තුල.
ඔව්.
තුල දන්නේ නැහැ මොකද ඉන්ටර්වල් එකක් දන්නේ නැහැ. white box කියන්නේ පේනවා.
පේනවා.
දන්නවා ඉන්ටර්වල් එකක් දන්නවා. වැරදි. මම කිව්වේ වැරදි.
black
white
hat.
hat and red hat.
ඒක හරි. එතකොට white hat කියන්නේ ethical hacking and
Ethical.
unethical. Yeah.
Okay, so wrong terminology. So here it is the ethical side. It is not a attack, basically. Okay. Okay. Specific activity tools. Specific activities that you would carry out in the planning stage. Okay. Attack is the planning stage, right? ඒක ක්ලයන්ට් දන්නවද? ඔයාගේ ඉන්ටෙන්ෂන් මොනවද? එයාගේ බ්‍රේක් කරලා කරනවද?
ඒ නැති කතාවක් කියලා. BMS කියන්නේ කෙල්ල ගතම මම මනසේ
open source intelligence කියන්නේ attack technique overseas කියන්නේ open source intelligence කියන්නේ. එතකොට ඒක අර attack නේ boundary cross වුණ ගමන් මොකක්ද cross වුණ ගමන් ඒක pen testing එක attack කරන්න දෙනවා. දැන් මෙහෙම ඔයා server එකක in a server you're knocking and seeing all open ports, right? Ports can be like that one. In one instance you are knocking to improve the security.
Yeah.
Is that right? One instance you are knocking to find the weak point. That is sample attack. Was getting to get them pattern attack. That is not question. That is pen testing. That is attack. එතකොට ඔය port scanning කියන එක මම කිව්වා great. Based on the use case you have to reason out whether it's going to the pen testing side, whether it's going to the OSINT. Okay? ඒක කියන තමයි මේක වලදී. Right? Any other questions? Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Okay. Answer everything may normally planning stage create the systematic protocol, create the intelligence objectives, do a mode scan and scope it out, define the scope. Planning වලට මම කියවන specific activities කියන planning stage එක මම මෙතන අර mode scanning එකේ trick එකක් ඒක strong planning stage එක කරනවා නෙමෙයි. හැබැයි ඒක ඕනනම් ඒක දාන්න. ඔය ප්‍රොඩියුසර් ස්කෝර් එක ස්කෑනින් කියන්නේ නෑනෝ ටිකලි ගන්න දැන්නේ ඊළඟට නේද හැබැයි ඒක ඇත්තට දැම්ම කියන වැරදිද මොකද ඒක රීසන් එක කියන්නේ මගේ මේක ප්ලෑන් කරනකොට මම ස්කෝප් කරන්න ඕන I'm going to scope it to this particular server based on post scan right you have to write reason out. Okay, next question.
Recall. කෝඩ් එකෙන් කරේ.
ඉන්න
Okay, the question, I think this is straightforward. Note down 2 software tools that you can use for data collection stage, and briefly state why you selected the tool and describe how you are going to use the tool for. Again, you have to, when the tools correct, you have to state the tool, say why, and then how which tool can be used for which. Again, when you answer, you have to make sure that the attack versus set boundary is not reached, right? Okay, Megha.
දැන් මම ටික උඩට ඔය විදිහට කරනවා. ඒක තමයි මම
ෂෝඩ්
Data cleaning के लिए वो
ෂෝඩ් ඉදාගෙන ෂෝඩ් මොකක්ද ආවස් ෂෝඩ්
validation and cleaning. Cleaning is you take out the relevant data. Validation is something else. First check it. You triangulate. You attempt to triangulate using different sources. Cross check. Validation is cleaning. You have a whole data set, and cleaning is you take out relevant data. Validation is the data that you decide to take into the project. You validate that it is correct. And this is cross checking and so we get cross checking one technique, triangulation one another technique, right? So these are my answers to these ideas, you know. Have a look. Okay, then I cleaning you would take it out. 2 steps in. Right. That was the easy question, no? Because my lazy question is नहीं लगा. Answers?
මේක දීලා මෙතනදී අහපු එකට උත්තරේ දීලා කියන්න වෙන්නේ මේ සිග්නල් එකේ නොයිස් එකේ ඉම්පැක්ට් එකනේ අහන්නේ. එතකොට ඒ කියන්නේ
Signal versus noise problem එක දානවා. ඒක කොහොමද මේ ඉන්වෙස්ටිගේෂන් එකට ඉෆෙක්ට් වෙන්නේ?
නොයිස් එක ගත්තොත් එහෙම දැන් amount large amount of data තියෙනවනේ. එතෙන්දී අපේ මේ voice int එක අපේ result එක රැස් වෙන්න පුළුවන් noise එකත් එක්ක අපි මේ capture impact එක.
ඕනේ. ඒක කොහොමද ඒක ස්පෙસિෆිකලි කියනවා මේකට එක්ක?
Okay.
Specific answers. Make a short answer, 5-mark question, right? You answer it. Okay.
ටාගට් කරනවානේ අපි ක්ලයින්ට් ඉන්ෆ්‍රාස්ට්‍රක්චර් එක.
Oh.
එතකොට අපි නොයිස් ගත්තොත් එහෙම එතනින් එහාට දේවල් එන්න පුළුවන් එතනින් ටාගට් එකෙන් එහාට. ඒතර මේන් සිග්නල් කියන්නේ මේන් ටාගට් එකට දාලා
Yeah, මෙතන මේ answer එක
අපි දැන් ඉන්නේ සෝෂල් මීඩියා
ඉතින් මේ මාස එක මේකම ආපස්සම තියෙනවා large amount of data from multiple sources, right? Your intelligence objective is to when you're answering that, in this particular case you're getting a large amount of information, even large amount of information from multiple sources. So there's a high chance that a lot of noise is also mixed with the signal. That is it, that's the answer. Okay? Okay, ප්‍රශ්නේ උත්තරේ තියෙනවා. ඒක explain කරලා ලියන්න. මේක ඔක තමයි ඉස්සරහට. මේක මේ පරිදි කොටස එක ලේසියි. Okay, now let us briefly explain the role of automated cruising. Now proceed even problem stated. How do you use automated cruising reducing the impact of this problem? You have to give an example. Specific. Examples? Yeah.
ඩුප්ලිකේට් පෝස්ට් තියෙනවා සෝෂල් මීඩියා ගන්න හින්දා ඩුප්ලිකේට් පෝස්ට් තියෙනවා අයින් කරන්න ඕන. එතකොට පොත ලාර්ජ් amount එකට අපිට මැනුවල් කරන්න බෑ ඔක. එතන අපි તો 100,000 වගේ සමහරට එතකොට එතන මැනුවල් කරන්න බෑ. එතකොට අපි ටූල් එකකට දාලා ඩුප්ලිකේට් data ලැන්ග්වේජ් ප්‍රශ්න තියෙන ඒවා ඊට පස්සේ
Example එකත් එක්ක කියනවද කොහොමද?
ඒ ලෙවල් එකට උතන
හරි ඔය මේක හරි. මේ usage එක හරි. මම example කරනවා. නෑ ඔව් මේ ඕකේ වා කියන එක හරි. මට actual example එකක් දෙන්න. කොහොමද කරන්නේ?
ටූල් එක දාන්න.
ඔව් tool එක වගේ. short නේද කරන්නේ?
මොකද ටූල් එක දාන්න?
ඒක කිව්වා.
ටෙක්ස්ට් බුක්ස් එක ලියන එකත්
නෑ මම හිතන්නේ.
ඒ කොන්ටෙන්ට් මල්ටිපල් එකකින් මේ data ටික මොඩියුලස් එක දානවා. ඒකෙම තියෙනවා මේ filtering and produce. ඒක කොන්ටෙන්ට් මොඩියුල්ස් විදියට මොඩියුල්ස් වල විදියට එනවා. ඒක ඊට පස්සේ කම්බයින් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකෙන් මේ
අපි last time
මේ මොකද ඇයි ඒක බබ මේකට ගේන්නේ? මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ ඇයි ඒක ගේන්නේ? Multiple sources වලින් data ගන්නවා කියන්නේ social media, intelligence feed, dark web ඔක්කොම recon වලින් කරන්න පුළුවන් දේවල් ටික. නේ? මොන recon එකද තියෙන්නේ? recon වලින් මේ ටික කරා. ඊට පස්සේ ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා එක එක data sets. They are large data sets to extract. Now big problem with signal versus noise. From recon.ng itself you can do the reduce impact of this problem. ඔයාගේ මොදේව උඩ recon වලින් කරන්න පුළුවන්.
ෂෝට් නේ රිකෝඩ්.
short නෙමෙයි. short නෙමෙයි.
දෙක මාරු. හරිද? සර් මැල්ටිකෝ එක අමාරු නේද අරගෙන දැන් ඩුප්ලිකේට් මොකද දැන් අපි බැලුවනේ සර් මැල්ටිකෝ එකෙන් කොහොමද හිතන්නකෝ දැන් අපි අර පෝස්ට් ගත්තයි කියලා ලක්ෂයක් විතර වගේ මේක අරගෙන ඒක මැල්ටිකෝ එකේදී කොහොමද කරන්නේ?
මැල්ටිකෝ වල මෙහෙම අපි තුන් ක්ලාසස් දෙකකට notes කීපයක් එනවා කියලා duplicates වගේ.
ඔව් නෑ ඒක නෑ දැන් මේ කියන ටාගට් එකට මැල්ටිකෝ යූස් කරන්න බෑනේ. මෙතන තියෙන social data ගොඩක් අපි තමයි සයදා කරේ social data 10000ක් දීලා post 10000 ඒ වගේ එකක් මැල්ටිකෝ එකෙන් කරන්න බෑනේ මේක.
ඔයාලා කන්ෆියුස් කරා. එතන තමයි දැන් එතන remove කරේ ඇත්තටම signal versus noise නෙමෙයි එතන කරේ.
අපි noise විතරයි කරේ.
එතන කරේ අපි machine learning library එකට data pre-process කරා.
ඔව් pre-process කරා.
එතකොට ඒකට machine learning library එකට multiple post දීලා වැඩක් නැති හින්දා තමයි එතන අයින් කරේ. ඒක noise තමයි ඉතින්. හැබැයි මෙතන signal versus noise problem කියන්නේ ඒක නෙවෙයි නේ. මෙතන signal versus noise problem එක කියලා කියන්නේ you're looking at the entity in terms of multiple data sources and multiple large number of data. And because of that, same observation, you are getting contradictory findings. ඒක තමයි මේ issue එක. දැන් එතනදී අපි අපි tool එක use කරන්නේ අර conflicting ඒවා අයින් කරන්න. එතන તો කෙනෙක් noise එක අයින් කරනවා. signal එක. අර අපි කරපුවා ඒකත් හරි ඔය noise එක තමයි අයින් කරන්නේ. හැබැයි එතන ඒ duplicates ඔක්කොම අයින් කරලා clean කරේ අර machine learning library එකට අවශ්‍ය කරන විදිහට data feed කරනවා.
okay.
එතකොට ඒ signal වල මෙතන තියෙන ඒ signal වල problem එක නෙවෙයි.
okay.
ඒක clear නේද? ඒක okay the point but this is not relevant to this question. Okay? For this particular question.
passive data කියන්නේ ඒ කියන්නේ අර යාලා නොදැන අපි කලෙක්ට් කරන data ටික තමයි passive. ඒ කියන්නේ
object එකට interact කරන්න.
නැතුව
Okay. Yes. ඒ හරියට ඒක answers කියන
quiz. Yeah.
passive data collection හැබැයි you have to relate it with this case.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Others?
Data data. Double data තියලා ඉඳපන්.
What is metadata? Data about data.
Yeah.
So when you're answering this, you're extracting related to this case metadata. Okay, මෙතන ට්‍රික් එක තමයි අර මම ඔයගොල්ලෝ අපි හිතමු මේ ඉන්වෙස්ටිගේෂන් එකේ ඉන්ටෙලිජන්ස් ඔබ්ජෙක්ටිව් එකට directly applicable data නම් මම extract කරන්නේ. That is not metadata, that is data. So if it's data about data, then that is useful. And then you have to say, okay, your answer is correct. Okay, so you have to okay, one specific example to make a couple of examples. When you answer is that हमने हमारे इसमें पढ़ा होता कर अभी माता नदास මේක බවුන්ඩරි එකට ග්‍රේ එකක්. මේකේ මම බලන්නේ ඔක ජස්ටිෆිකේෂන් එක කරන්නේ. දැන් මම ඒක අන්සර් දෙන්න අන්ඩර්ස්ටෑන්ඩ් කරගන්න.
question
Hmm?
question
Question is
metadata.
three specific ways how metadata analysis can support this ongoing investigation. Okay, we state how the metadata will be captured, extracted, and then analyzed. So that we start take a look at analysis.
මොන metadata වලින් අපිට ස්කෝප් එකත් එක්ක ඩිසයිඩ් කරන්න පුළුවන් මේ ස්කෝප් එකට ගන්න data එක
හරි ආන්සර් එකක් ගන්න.
ඒක
ඔයා
තමයි
කියන්නේ ආන්සර් එකේ බේසිස් එක තමයි වන්නේ. මට ඕනේ මෙන්න මේක තමයි ස්පෙસિෆික් metadata එක. මේක මෙහෙම එක්ස්ට්‍රැක්ට් කරන්නේ මෙන්න මේකයි ටූල් එක.
ඒක කියන්නේ
මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ප්‍රස්තාවයක් කියන්නේ. Make the task එක තමයි. Now in this case, what is the intelligence objective? Intelligence objective is you're under attack, client is under attack, you are hired to do the investigation on the attack, right? So one particular source is social media discussions, talking, right? So social media posts or anything related to that incident is data. What is data about that data? Time of post, location of post, where the post was generated from. Data about data. Social media again. Post එක කරනවා vertical right click කරලා file එක right click කරලා බලුවත් vertical metadata වෙන්නේ. Post කරේ කොහෙද වෙලාව කවුද කරේ. දැන් මෙතන social media post එකේ is data. I need that as data. Or you are tracking, if somebody is discussing and there are data discussions about that is data for my industry. Extracting that is not metadata, but data about that data. Post location, origination point, time, country, that is metadata. So I say, okay, this is my metadata. How do I extract it? So Kinko's even Bantico, right click and entity, social media data. Well, yeah. As a module, there's social media tools, modules, yes, and then you extract. And then you say, it's a common, then 2 points here. So meaning how is that supported? If you think if there's a connection between these posts and where the tag is originating, I would look at the metadata to see, okay, the country of origin. And that would give me indication on where the tags may be generated from. Okay, task. Okay, एक आंते non अर्थन no marks. Okay, question number 3.
ඉස්සෙල්ල කියපු අර ඉස්සෙල්ල කිව්වේ AI tool එකට අපි දාන pre process කරේ ඒ වගේ example එකක් නේද ඉස්සෙල්ලා අපි කිව්වේ AI tool එකට දාන pre process කරේ clear කරලා noise sign කරලා ඒ වගේ process එකක් නේ ඒතර explain කරන්න ඒතර example එකක් අරගෙනද explain
example එකක් අරගෙන කරන්න using clear examples ආන්සර් දෙන්න
අපි මොකක් හරි incident එකකට Facebook මේ post එකකට සම්බන්ධව data extract කරනවා Facebook එකෙන් extract කරලා එතන එන data set එක අරගෙන ඉස්සෙල්ලම අපි කරන්නේ එතන කියන්නේ duplicate වගේ තියෙනවා නම් අයින් කරනවා එතකොට data large number of data අඩු වෙනවා ඊට පස්සේ language අදාළ නැති ටික අයින් කරනවා එතකොට අපිට relevant ඒවා විතරක් එනවා එතෙන්ට ඊට පස්සේ අර smileys එක තියෙන ඒවා text වලට convert කරනවා ඒ වගේ process ටික
පිළිවෙල ලකුණු මැදම පහක්
මේ සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක නේද උතාරු
my example is one example. So my overseeing mama left task is नहीं overseeing thing is for sentiment, right? So my intention is I want to from a public data set I want to see what is the public sentiment towards okay my product release, right? That's the use case. Then I say okay these are the steps and if you do these steps first step remove duplicate second step remove the hashtags and all that. Third step, remove smileys. Fourth step, remove something else, and then you send your emotions. Then you get the result. Versus order change कर लो. Smiley removal में hashtag, you keep the smileys, keep the hashtags, and then again do it. What would be the most successful result? The second one, right? Your specific pre-processing activities in the first case remove the key data component that is essential for the analysis, the hashtags and smiley faces. In the second stage, the order is changed where those are removed and I'm only doing the remaining ones. In that case, it will have the order in which how the activities are conducted. Make it key දේ තමයි මේ order එක කොහොමද වෙනස් මේ order එක අනුව කොහොමද මේක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ කියන්නේ. එතකොට ඔයාලගේ answer එක අනිවාර්යයෙන් මේ steps ටික නෙමෙයි. මේ steps ටික මෙහෙම කරොත් මෙහෙම වෙනවා. මේ steps ටික මේ අනිත් order එකෙන් කරොත් මෙහෙම වෙනවා. ඒක තමයි answer. නැත්තම් මේ විස්තර කරන්නේ නෙමෙයි. මේක exactly ඔය විදිහටම අපි මේක කරන්නේ. හරි. Clear? Any questions? මේ challenge කරන්න පුළුවන්. No? Okay. टेक्निकल मतलब ये लगती है समार प्रीप्रोसेसिंग की है ना स्टॉप वर्ड्स रिमूव करा और सेंटेंस मीनिंग ब्रेक करो again का और वो आगे लेना कलम देवल मीनिंग एबली मौका ने आंसर का सर ऑर्डर का नसुना में ऑर्डर का මෙහෙම කරා තව වඩා ඉන්ටෙලිජන්ස් ඔබ්ජෙක්ටිව් එක ආන්සර් කරන්න සපෝට් එකක් එනවා.
देखे को थोड़ा उर्दू किधर है आगे दिए
Okay, make a simpler. This is exactly what we did today. Okay, no? Role of think and see project is from multiple data sources. For example, so my key thing is most answers, generic answer is not sufficient. It has to be supported by exact concrete example, and that is why lab sessions are important. Okay, final one. Make it another field question. Okay.
Legal things. Something and yeah.
Make it not generally, I think should be okay, right? So trade-off. Business creator, you have to pitch in the business one. Technical side, you have diverse audiences and with differing point of view and differing objectives. How do you cater for all of these audiences, right? So that's one challenge. We have to give 3 challenges. So 3 solutions and best practices. Are you funny? They are ඒක මාදා ඉන්නේ ඒක පහින් තුනක් මෙතන ලියුණා. Okay. 3 solutions of best practice.
ඉතුරු දෙක ඊළඟ පාර. ඉතුරු දෙක අපේ.
Okay, so see.
Here.
Last So here you give your opinion and then give your argument supporting it. You can say the strict privacy laws would decrease the effectiveness of policing. That's other side. Strict ones would not decrease. Will decrease, not decrease. Will like the these are your argument. With example. Will not decrease, these are your research with example. The better answer from the party half away. Taking on earlier. One if you made up my name. Ariana said, they answer anything that wrong. Justification. So, this your question, your paper, same structure. Question in there. Similar. Okay. Any questions on the exam or exam papers? Post kal rahe by then. Exam.
So the theory complete.
Theory complete. The remaining ones will be the lab sessions.
So next week करने वाला सेशन है लैब सेशन है टूल लेकर
Machine learning.
हैं
Machine learning.
मशीन लर्निंग
Python, Jupyter notebook, Python, Jupyter only है.
Yeah.
Python ऊपर जाती with IDE. Base code or something.
ये स्क्रीन शॉट करवाना
Okay. Python and the IDE.